What's up YouTube? I'm Vaughn and this is the Gear channel where we discuss collectibles, hobbies, Quebec games from tabletop to video games, and today we're back again with Know Your Policy, and this time we are reading chapter 3, Penalties. Now this chapter contains A warning, B game losses, C match losses, D disqualification, and E upgrading and downgrading penalties. Now I'm very happy that this is a short chapter because I'm still sick and my throat is pretty dead, so I do apologize if I have to either cough or take a small sip of water because I'm not 100%. So definitely hit that like and subscribe button because it really helps the channel a lot and I do really appreciate it. And especially share this if you know anyone that could definitely benefit from these type of penalties, because this is a really good policy to know as a duelist and also as a judge. So let's get straight into it. So, chapter 3, penalty. Penalties are the consequences of infractions. Now, we mentioned before the difference of infractions is that infraction is the action, like if someone did an illegal play, then that would be the infraction, and then the penalty is what is given for that specific infraction. So, even an unintentional infraction can impact the tournament, so appropriate penalties should be assigned regardless of whether or not the person committing the infraction was aware of it not allowed. So there are 4 types of penalties: warning, game loss, match loss, disqualification. Judges must use only these penalties and may not create or implement new ones. A warning. A warning is the most commonly utilized penalty. It is given to a person who committed a minor infraction that does not have a significant impact to the tournament. A warning is given uh, out if the judge believes that a infraction to be minor or unintentional. See section 3H on sporting conduct for exemptions. Okay, a warning itself does not have a large impact on a person or a tournament, but it serves as a training tool for the duelist and allows tournament staff to track a potential problem. Repeated warnings for the same infraction can be upgraded. Warnings must be checked within form. If the tournament is using a match slip, it should be written on the match slip. If the tournament is using a KTS, it should also be recorded there. A warning should always be followed by a brief education for the duelist explaining why the penalty was handed out and that a further infraction can lead to an upgrade, which is very important. So judges always explain to the players why they're receiving this specific infraction and definitely warn them how this can potentially be upgraded to something much more severe. An upgrade to a warning is a game loss. So B, game loss. A game loss is given out when a person has committed an infraction which is not severe enough for forfeit an entire match or to be removed from the tournament premises, but this is significant impact on the game. A game loss is appropriate for situations where a game state is irreparable due to the action of the person receiving the penalty. The penalty is given if the judge believes that the infraction was unintentional. See section 3H on sporting conduct for exceptions. If a game loss is given out during a game, the person receiving the penalty forfeits the current game. If a game loss is given out between game of a match, the person receiving the penalty forfeits the upcoming game. So this is specifically talking about like siding. So if you did game 1 and you're in siding, then game 2 will be an automatic win for the opposite player that is receiving the penalty. So if a game loss penalty is given out before the start of a match, the person receiving the penalty forfeits the first game of the upcoming match. If a game loss is given out before a match, neither duelist may use the side deck prior to the beginning of the first played game. So you have to keep this in mind. If it's game 1 and someone received a game loss, game 2 no one is siding. Okay, so I've seen a lot of judges mistaken this and say like, yeah, only one player is allowed to side, the other one's no. It's like, no, neither player can side for game 2. Okay, if a game loss has given out during a match and the match winner has not been decided, both duelists may use their side deck prior to the next game. So let's see, if a game loss is given out during a match and the match winner has not been decided, both duelists may use their side deck prior to the next game. Okay, so that means if it's Okay, so that means, okay, let me explain. So they're talking about game two. So if it's game one, let's say that you won. Game two, your opponent received a game loss of penalty, and you're going into game three. Game three, you are allowed to side. Okay, that's what I'm getting from this information right here, is that you are allowed to side for game three. Okay, so a game loss must be tracked in written forms. If the tournament is using a match slip, it should be a written on the match slip. If the tournament is using KDS, it should also be recorded there. Now, there is something that it's not really stating. Let me just read this part. So, a game loss should always be followed by a brief education of the duelist explaining why the penalty was handed out, and further, the infraction can lead to an upgrade. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is that if you receive a match loss at the end, I mean a game loss at the end of your match, and let's say it's something that's relative like towards that match, you won't receive a game loss for that match. It's going to be on your next round. Okay. And the reason for this is that there's actually a lot of examples like involving with like time and like specific that if you are trying to fast track it, it's too situational and very different on scenarios on both players and even like strategy and plays that they were going to commit. So that's why if the match is over and you receive a game loss, it's going to be pushed towards your next round. The first game on your next round, it's going to be applied. Okay, so an upgraded to a game loss is a match loss. So C, match loss, is the penalty is given for an infraction that seriously impacts the game but does not require the duelist to be removed from the tournament. Okay, so they're talking about disqualifications. Okay, this penalty is given if the judges believe that the infraction was unintentional. See section 3H on sporting conduct for exceptions. Only a head judge may give out a match loss penalty, with the exception of a match loss tardiness penalty. If the head judge feels that the applying that the match loss penalty to the current round is not severe enough, if the duelist commits the infraction as they are about to lose a match, for example, the head judge may apply the penalty for the upcoming round. So this is pretty close to what we just said about for the game loss as well. But yeah, it could definitely be towards the next round. So something that you definitely have to keep note on. So if a duelist simultaneously commits two infractions, one of which merits a match loss and the other which merits a game loss, the judge should give the match loss penalty first, followed by the game loss. And imagine that. So in this situation, yeah, if you receive a match loss for the current game, current match right now, that means the game loss will be for the next round. A match loss must be tracked in written forms. If the tournament is using a match slip, it should be written on the match slip. If the tournament is using a KDS, it should be also recorded there. So that is going pretty much explain it for every single section, but we're going to read it just in case. So a match loss should always be followed by a brief education of the duelist explaining why the penalty was handed out and that further infractions can lead to an upgrade. So they're definitely going to repeat this part as well because they really want the judges to be aware and to really educate the players, which I think is very important as well because we have seen many times that judges don't do this. So I see Konami is really trying to force it on the judges to do so. So an upgrade to a match loss is a disqualification. D, disqualification. A disqualification is the most severe penalty that can be given. A disqualification is given for severe infraction that requires the person to be removed from the tournament or the tournament premises, which is usually the case. So it's the whole property. So you won't be allowed anywhere. So especially like in the venue, like you can't even continue staying if you want to like spectate or if you want to do like trades at booths as well. You won't be allowed. You want to be escorted out. A disqualification is usually given when a person intentionally breaks tournament rules or as an upgrade from previous penalties. Judges need to investigate carefully to determine whether or not the duelist is intentionally breaking the rules. Ignorance of the rules is not the same thing as a lack of intent. Ignorance of a rules does not necessarily prevent the person from being disqualified, which is very true. If you don't know, like something that it could be like really like dumb, like it could be like looking through your deck while you're not supposed to be looking, or like it could be stuff like that that doesn't seem like too severe towards most to do, but is definitely is severe as well. Or if you were like doing a play illegally constantly throughout the whole tournament and you didn't know it was illegal, like that could be another thing for like an example. So all persons attending a tournament are subject to the same penalties and infraction. This means that the person not enrolled in the event as a duelist are not exempt from the disqualification penalties and can be disqualified if they commit an infraction that merits the disqualifications. Okay, the infraction does not need to have occurred inside the venue as long as it as long as it impacts upon or connects to a sanction or official event, which is very true because well, basic example is me. How I got my suspension had nothing to do of what I did at an actual event. It had to do with a video that I did on an event. Okay, so that is very true that you could receive penalties, even disqualifications or other things even outside of it. So KDE US reserves the rights to suspend persons from KDE organized play programs for infractions not connected to a specific event. Example, me. There you go. There are two types of disqualification penalty. Disqualification with prize. The penalty is only given out through the upgrade process. A person who commits the same infraction multiple times throughout an event and has their penalty upgraded to a disqualification should only be with prize if it occurs during the single elimination portion of the event, where the duelist has already earned prizing via to their tournament ranking, and disqualification via an upgrade should not award prizing if the upgrade was due to an unsportsmanlike conduct infraction or if the disqualification occurred during a Swiss round of an event, which is this is actually something really important to note, is that if the disqualification like occurred afterwards and not like prior, like you could actually still receive your prize. So this is actually very good and something that you should know in case if this does happen, if you're in this specific situation. This is something that you should really pay attention to. And then the next one is disqualification without prize. This penalty is given out when a person intentionally breaks tournament policy. This includes, but is not limited to, cheating and unsportsmanlike conduct behavior. The person will be dropped from the event and in the most cases required to leave the venue. Okay, so one is intentional, the other one is unintentional, pretty much. Okay, so only the head judge may disqualify a person from an event. If a person is disqualified, a written statement must be filled out by any and all person involved, including opponents, spectators, judges, tournament official, etc. It is the head judge's responsibility to collect these written statements from those involved and provide them to the tournament organizers. It is the tournament organizer's responsibility to send the statements to the KDE penalty committee within 7 days of the event. This is very important. Okay, only the KDE penalty committee can suspend persons from KDE organized play. So, example, disqualification. A duelist commits a second marked card strict infraction during the final Swiss rounds of the tournament. There are not additional rounds to be played. The head judge has upgraded the penalty and from a match loss to a disqualification with prize. As a result of the disqualification penalty, the duelist is dropped from the event. However, since prizing for switch events are only awarded to the duelists who are still active in the event, this duelist is not eligible to receive prizings. Okay? So disqualifications, okay. A duelist commits a second mark card strict infraction during the final playoff round of the event. The head judge has upgraded the penalty from the match loss to a disqualification with prize. Prizing is being awarded to all players who made the top 8 playoffs, and the duelist should still receive the 2 second place prizing. So good to know. So pretty much when it's if you're in top 8 and then you receive a disqualification, you still get your prize. Or if it actually increase, because don't forget prizes could also be qualification as well. So if you get your Nats invite, that could be the prize as well. Or if it increased even more than just the top 8, this is something that you have to pay attention as well. So disqualification: a duelist commits a third unsportsmanlike conduct major infraction during the final playoff match of the event. The head judge has upgraded the penalty each time, starting with a game loss and then match loss and then a disqualification. Prizing is being awarded to all players who made the top 8 playoffs. The duelist is not eligible to receive prizing since the upgraded was due to an unsportsmanlike conduct infraction. Okay, so good to know that unsportsmanlike conduct would usually lead towards without prizing. Okay, so a duelist commits an unsportsmanlike conduct severe infraction during the tournament. The head judge has given out the disqualification without prizes. Penalties and duelists should be dropped from the event and awarded no prizing, regardless of in which around the infraction occurred, which is very true. So upgrading and downgrading penalties. Okay, only the head judge of an event may upgrade or downgrade a penalty. Penalties may be upgraded or downgraded. Infractions should never be upgraded or downgraded. Upgraded should only be given to a person repeating the same infraction during the course of the same event. Okay, a head judge may choose to be a bit more lenient in the upgrade process during a tier 1 event, choosing not to upgrade the penalty after the second infraction. So they're talking about local tournaments. Okay, they still follow policy, but they're saying for penalties that they don't have to upgrade it. So a head judge should be consistent about upgrading penalties at tier 2 events. So regionals, then they should start upgrading right away towards like the game losses and even the match losses and disqualifications. While like local events, even like you find it's very rare that you hear someone get a game loss or a match loss. Actually, I would say a match loss or disqualification is very rare to hear at local events. If an event extends across more than one day, all days should be considered the same event and penalties should continue to be upgraded. Appropriate to upgrade. A duelist commits a slow play infraction at a regionals and is given a warning. Later in the same event, the same duelist commits another slow play infraction. The appropriate response to is to upgrade from the warning to a game loss. Okay, so another appropriate upgrade is a duelist is not keeping track of her life points on paper, procedural error minor, on day 1 of the YCS and received a warning. On day 2 of the YCS, she again does not keep track of her life points on paper. Day 2 is considered a continuation of day 1, so it is appropriate to response is to upgrade from the warning to a game loss. Now, not appropriate to upgrade, a duelist shifts the position of their cards on the field at a regional procedural error minor and receives a warning. Later in the same tournament, they set a spell and or trap card, then attempted to take back the move. Procedural error minor. Although both infractions are procedural error minor, they are not the same error. It is not appropriate to upgrade the penalty for the secondary procedure error. So I did mention this, I think at the beginning, uh, or maybe it was chapter 2 or 1, that for upgrades, okay, for a warning, it has to be the exact same thing. Now, this thing, like, they're talking about like monsters and then going to spell trap card of trying to take back misplaced. Now, those are two different things, like, completely. So they're going to get two PE minors, okay, but it's not going upgraded because it's not specifically the same one. So someone could do accumulation of multiple PE minors as long as it's not the same reasons, they won't get an upgrade. Because at the same time, what happened if I'll give you an example why this actually makes sense. Imagine if someone's brand new, just started playing the game, and they decide to go to a regionals. Okay, first regionals, second time playing Yu-Gi-Oh. They don't really know. Okay, so they're doing like multiple mistakes. They're getting multiple PE minus, but they're not repeating the same mistakes. And that's the whole point of the warnings, is that they're trying to make sure that you understand and not to repeat the same infractions multiple times. So it actually does make sense to have this, and why it's important that the penalties have to be specifically the same. It has to be the exact same infraction for that penalty to be upgraded. Okay, so a head judge may downgrade a penalty under extreme circumstances, but should also adhere to official policy in order to remain impartial and consistent. So downgrading a penalty can be appropriate if the infraction is occurred due to circumstances beyond the person's control. Downgrading a penalty can be appropriate when the standard penalty will have no impact on the tournament. A person's age or experience level is not usually a sufficient reason to downgrade a penalty. It is appropriate to educate and reassure the person, but judges should not assume the habit of downgrading penalties for infraction committed by new duelists or young persons. Now, we're going to go for an example of like downgrading in a second. I haven't ever really heard or seen someone downgrade a penalty. So like I said, like maybe if someone did like more downgrade, as in like more leanway towards like I can see how someone could do that towards like a young kid, even though they're saying like not to, but I can see how a judge could downgrade a penalty and decides to give like an additional like warning instead of a game loss, because like it's a young kid that just started playing the game as well. So I could see that as an example, but for me, like, I never saw it though. Okay, so example appropriate to downgrade. A duelist leaves the venue to buy food after being told by the TO that the next round will not start for another 20 minutes. The TO does not inform the head judge who started the next round. When the duelist returns, he finds that he is more than 3 minutes late and would receive a game loss. The head judge investigated, determined that the TO did not provide inaccurate information, and the duelist had no way of knowing that the round was about to start. It is appropriate to remove the infraction. Okay, so that's that's actually a good example right there. So appropriate to downgrade. A duelist in the final round of Swiss at a YCS loses and the match, which ends his chance to move onto a single elimination. The duelist tears the match slip and refuses to sign it because he is so upset with the loss. Given a game loss for this unsporting conduct, major infraction will have no impact on the tournament since they will not be a subsequent match. It is appropriate to downgrade the penalty to de-escalate the situation. Explain that the duelist that the penalty is being downgraded. Okay, now it's kind of weird that they said for like habits like towards like kids or beginning players, but then to de-escalate when someone is pulling a tantrum. I disagree, because I had like players like lose their shit and like threw their cards and everything and just like drop from like the regionals or YCS like just because like they lost. So I don't know. I disagree. Like yes, there's ways to de-escalate it, but I don't think you should downgrade. And I disagree. There's many ways to de-escalate that situation, but I don't think that you should downgrade the penalty at all, especially if they're acting inappropriate like that. So, not appropriate to downgrade. A young duelist attend a regional qualifier for the first time with a deck sleeved in two different kinds of sleeves. A deck check determines that the marked card's major is the appropriate penalty, while the duelist is new and did not understand why she cannot use two different kinds of sleeves. The age and skill level of the duelist does not mean the penalty should be downgraded. The duelist should be educated and reinsured. Okay. And that's it for chapter 3, guys. Yeah, because this is chapter 4 infraction that we're going to actually do for next week. But yeah, that's actually very good. I did actually learn a few things. There's a few things that I didn't know 100% because especially for deciding after a game loss, it's been a lot of different things that I heard, but now we know at least if it's game 1 that you receive a game loss. For game 2, there's no siding, but if it's game 3, then there is siding. So that is good information to definitely know. There's actually a lot of really good information that was here that we read, so I definitely do recommend to share this towards like every player or even judges that you may know, because this is something that we can all benefit 100% from. And that's it for Know Your Policy series, chapter 3, penalties. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe. And if you want a sneak peek of future products we're planning to review here on the channel, you can follow me on my Instagram, VaughnGear. I'm Vaughn, and this was the Gear Channel.